Alrighty, let's get it. And I'm feeling a bit solid this game, so I'm gonna do some channeling of the great Ulf Andersson. And he typically played Finchetto systems, but he was known to be a big proponent of the exchange. And my opponent is doing an interesting line to avoid the exchange variation. And I feel as if we should pick up the gauntlet. Bishop f4 seems reasonable. And then what? Something like this. Hard to defend that pawn.
I give one, you get one. Yeah, fair trade, maybe? No, not for you.
Don't think so. Had to think about it some though. This is not a position I typically play, but okay. Still big threat there if he takes a bunch. Are we missing something, folks? I don't believe we are. What is the most efficient way to play this? Should we take there first? I believe maintaining the bishop pair is better. So I'm going to take the rook. Now, for the sake of annoyance, rook d1 seems most accurate, because I would like to play b3, but I didn't want to be involved in any of the nonsense on the long diagonal. Okay. Now that that issue is handled, we just secure that square. We have no weaknesses, so the opponent is trying, to his credit, to create some way to get into the position. And we're going to do a trade down on my terms here. I finished development. If he wants it, like I said, it's going to be on my terms. And I can force trades all the way to this ending, to where, worst case scenario, I'm playing for 2 results, as I'm hitting both of these targets. Now, the engine definitely would be like, how frickin' dare you ever give away material? It will definitely like a better continuation, but I feel that this, from a practical perspective, is very strong. I'm going to sit this on a light square, and I'm covering the d4 square, so bishop and rook can't pile up here. That gives my other rook a free hand, and now I'm threatening back rank mate, and that's hard to deal with. So let's go ahead and play h4 to make sure we have a lift, so we don't get back rank mated once I do a lift. And after check, bishop f8 blocks. We win the bishop, and with it the game, because the pawn's far too slow to be any sort of threat. I don't see how he's getting counterplay here, So rook a1 is the only way to really prevent me from lifting the rook. Otherwise, it is over. Probably that's his idea. Since he's doing that, let's try to take away a square, solidify the chain. We'll skip behind that because it's going to get harder for him to move, and I can improve my position on the king side. Want to play g4 to take away that square. Good move. So f3, if he checks, that's fine. Excellent. That gets me the pawn in hand. Very difficult for him to defend this. We'll take the twofer. And we'll make it a rather clinical game here. Two for none is enough, but I want them connected as they're easier to work with. So we'll force him to connect. And what's the best way to do this? King, king, push, king, push. That looks right. Very pleased with the level of play in that game. Okay, so my opponent, like I said, I wanted to play solidly, and I go with a classical King's Indian setup. Did the arrows come back? Show threat. No, I don't want to show threat, but you're still giving me arrows. It's just the game continuation. Got it. So yeah, e5. Maybe it's because I have the database showing. Nope. Ah. Best move arrow. That's what I needed to do. Now we're good. Sorry about that, folks. Little things I didn't want to distract from what I'm saying with the engine be like, here, look at me. So e5 is definitely the way to go, and I was planning on channeling good old Ulf and playing an exchange variation, which, you know, equality can be annoying to the ambitious. Keep that in mind when playing people who are very aggressive. But Queen e8 is a move that I have played before against. It was a 1400 USCF player in the first round of a tournament. And you go, well, why would you play a move that you know is probably objectively bad? Well, it's creative, it distracts them, and since they've never seen it before and you're much stronger, they go, oh, it must be good. Also, if you only prepared, say, one opening for a tournament, and you're playing in round one, you don't want to use your preparation for, say, you'd use for, if you're the top seed in a tournament, the second seed. So he saw what you did in round one, and he can prepare by the end of the tournament. So I will play secondary moves or moves that objectively I know are bad, but you can get away with them against much lower rated players. So Queen e8, I don't think it's the worst move. And we get an interesting position here. And after knight c6, knight b5, and what's? Yeah, it hasn't been played in the Lee Chess database. And it's interesting because this is equal, but I felt that this was just nearly busted for black. He's got to play the critical e6 move to cover that. Then after knight e3, yeah. Structure similar to what we had in the game. So this line with the e5 move that I played, he just missed a move, objectively. But that's really all it takes here. And let's see how clinical I was. Yes. I knew it would like c takes b5. Let's follow the computer line. And then h5 or knight g4. Yeah, I was thinking more rook c2, but I guess I've got rook d8 there. Yeah, I could have just taken the pawn. But I saw the ability to go this route, and I did say we would play in the way that Ulf does. Ulf would take the better ending and just play perfectly. I definitely am not accusing myself of playing perfectly, but I feel it was adequate. And it liked rook e7, but I do like my rationale of it's further away from the king, and it's covering an important square to make sure his bishop doesn't anchor up. Rook c1 is better than any other option on the back rank. Rook e1 encourages his bishop to go to a better square. Rook d1, it gets in the way of the rook. Rook b1, the checking square is covered by the bishop. So rook c1 is most optimal. That's why it's chosen best by the engine. Now, rook c8 is more forcing, which is why the engine likes it better. But h4, followed by check. g3 to take away that square so he can't defend. I want to keep an eye on the a-pawn. And I have very, very straightforward play here, and he's really in zugzwang, because say he plays h5. We're going to end up in the same kind of position. Even if you come back. The pawn will fall. So I played f3, and I think I don't have to trade down, but I felt that it's like I know that this ending has 100% won, and it has very low risk of me messing it up. So mate in 5 g6 immediately is more accurate, as we have that. You don't normally have the pawn there, but I just did a bit of calculation with my 20 seconds. Just double check that I'm forcing him out of the corner and keeping my pawn far away. I think people get too overzealous in these positions and get in a hurry and try to use both pawns. There's no need. All you need is one queen to win. Make sure your opponent doesn't have any stalemate tricks. So that'll do it for this interesting classical King's Indian with Queen e8.